everyone, and welcome to the We Love Hitchin Interviews 2024. My name is Matt Porter, founder of the Facebook group We Love Hitchin, which has been a vibrant community space for the past 9 years with a membership of almost 30,000 members. We're thrilled to be hosting today's event at the workshop Hitchin. A big shout out goes to James Jury for stepping up as our venue host today. The workshop provides hot desk space, co-working space and even office space, all here in this most interesting building in Hitchin. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been speaking with candidates running for the Hitchin constituency in the upcoming general election. We hope to learn more about their platforms, visions, and for the community, and their plans to address the key issues that matter to us most. Many of the questions asked today have been drawn from a recent ONS survey of the key things people worry about most, so let's get started. Joining me here today is Will Lavin. We're representing the Green Party. Welcome, Will.
Hello,
and thank you for being here today.
You're very welcome.
Let's start by getting to know a little bit more about you. Could you tell us about your background, what motivated you to run for the election in this new constituency?
Yes, yeah, thanks for inviting me here today, Matt. I've been involved in the Green Party for many a decade, so a long, long time. I could be said to be a founder member of the Green Party, in as much as I was on the National Executive Committee when we became the Green Party. We transformed from the Ecology Party in line with many of the growing green movements across Europe at the time. So I've been in the party for a long time, lots of green campaigning and political campaigning over the years. I have stood for Parliament a few times before. When I was young, I stood against John Major in Huntingdon. I was living in Huntingdon at the time, so did many platforms and radio shows and whatever with John Major. More recently, I was living in Bermondsey in London, and I stood against Simon Hughes, which was quite a hard campaign, again with a lot of hustings. So I've been involved in these sort of political battles before. It's a little bit more sedate, the sort of battles that we're having in Hitchin, a bit more civilised here. But I've lived in Hitchin for about 10 years with my family, and on brand, I love Hitchin, we love Hitchin. So we enjoy being here. I've always worked in consultancy and finance in the city usually, but I've also been a bit of an entrepreneur. I've had a restaurant and a shop, and currently I run a small training company. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you again for sharing that. Now let's dive into some key issues that's affecting the community and the country. The first one is cost of living crisis. Many families in Hitchin are struggling with the cost of living. Food prices seem to be rising at alarming rates, whilst we are being told inflation is now under control. What new measures would you propose to help alleviate these financial pressures?
Yes, it is a terrible situation we've got ourselves into, that we're one of the richest countries in the world, and we have this ridiculous disparity between the very, very wealthy and the very, very poor. And it breaks my heart that we've got something like 300,000 children in temporary accommodation. We've got nurses using food banks, and we've simultaneously got the rise of usage of food banks, while at the same time we've got a growth of people buying private jets and luxury yachts. And we want to address that inequity. Excuse me, I've got this newly minted manifesto that only came today, so I'll be looking at some of the numbers in here. So we will extend workers' rights, and we'll try to give more rights to those, particularly those in this new phenomenon of the gig economy, which gives no rights at all to workers. We'll increase the minimum wage to £15 an hour across the board, and universal credit will be increased by £40 a week. We'll also remove this two-child benefit cap, which makes no sense, both in terms of penalising families that have more than 2 children, but in terms of we have a decreasing population. Families are averaging 1.5 child at the moment, so logically it makes no sense either. We'll increase carers allowance by at least 10% a month. And what we're looking at is trying to develop policies so we'll have a maximum of 10-to-1 earnings ratio in public and private corporations, which means that, you know, you can't have a boss in a company that earns more in a day than their employers earn in a year. So we want to level out all these inequities.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much. And how would you propose to fund these initiatives without increasing the burden on the working taxpayer?
Yes, well, our funding will be generated by more tax, but not more tax on working people, but more tax on the rich. So we're proposing a 1% tax on assets over 10 million and 2% tax on assets over $1 billion. That in and other general tax policies such as unearned income being the same as earned income in the same tax rate will generate something like £70 billion a year. And I know these are sort of cliched words that all the other parties trail out, but all of these policies that we're coming up with have been costed, and they're in our manifesto. So you'll see when we get to health that there's a lot of spending in there, but it is based on raising income from other areas.
Okay. Yeah. And that moves us on to question 2, which is indeed about NHS and healthcare.
Yeah.
With 85% of people concerned about NHS, what are your plans to improve healthcare services, reducing waiting times and addressing staffing shortages?
Yes, the NHS and healthcare are criminally neglected in this country, and they've just been let to almost literally fall apart. We have buildings falling apart, and you know, it's a sad state of affairs in an NHS that we were rightly very proud of until relatively recently. So we're looking at an initial £20 billion investment in hospital buildings and repairs, and we'll settle the workers' pay demands and provide an immediate one-off payment, and that's to generate the confidence that workers can return to the NHS, and we maybe can bring in more workers that have recently left the NHS because they're disenchanted with the way it's gone. We're going to invest in primary care, additional £1.5 billion per year, £2 billion capital investment over the next 5 years, and we'll be funding NHS dentistry, so everyone in the country will be able to get an NHS dentist to the tune of £3 billion a year by 2030. And we have the ridiculous situation where people are pulling their own teeth out and not being able to get to a dentist at all at the moment. So we will address that. And we will put more emphasis on preventative care. So we'll address the issue earlier down the line. So the National Health Service isn't just a patching up service, and it can be more for acute cases in clinical care. And one of our big pledges is to social care, investing £20 billion a year in social care.
Excellent. And what specific steps will you take to ensure these improvements are sustainable long term?
Well, as I say, we want to support the NHS workers, so keep them part of the service and not losing them as we have been. We've been hemorrhaging NHS workers, and so that's why there's a lot of jobs going unfilled there. So we want to invest in those. We want to, as I mentioned, put an emphasis on prevention rather than cure. So we've got a lot of initiatives to try to keep people healthy and stop this sort of slide into sort of degenerative unhealthiness that the country has been going through.
Okay. That moves us on to question 3, which is the economy. The broader economic situation is a concern for 68% of the population. What strategies do you have to address inflation, unemployment, and sometimes employment where people are not prepared to do jobs nowadays, and economic stability?
Yes, well, we've talked a little bit about what the taxes that we're going to apply, and we'll have this wealth tax that I mentioned, and a capital gains tax. We'll also have a carbon tax, which will address the big polluters. We'll stimulate the economy by having a massive green investment programs to the tune of about £40 billion a year. We have in this country, we're an island, we have massive reserves of renewables that we could tap into, and we want to start on a huge insulation program across the country. And these measures are part of the initiatives which will stimulate the economy. I know we saw Labour, they've got this GB energy thing that they're talking about. They massively rolled back on their even more limited pledge than ours is now, that it was 28 billion they were talking about, and now it's down to, I think, 8 billion or something. They won't be doing anything like we're talking about. So we're talking about a real regeneration of the economy, to give better work to people and to give people a sort of a part in society. We're also looking at, as we know, we got into a ridiculous state with particularly water, where we haven't got clean water anywhere, and we're the only country in the world that's fully sold off our water companies, and we should be ashamed of doing that. And there's no point retreading why that happened, but we're in this situation now, and the Green Party are committed to bringing the water companies and some of the other utilities back into public ownership, and the railways back into public ownership. And all of these initiatives will be a big change to the economy and will stimulate the economy as well.
And really what you've done is answer the follow-up, really, which was, how do your economic policies differ from other parties? But is there anything anything that you think really differentiates yourself with why they would be more effective under the Green Party?
Well, I think we're committed to doing these things. We're not just tinkering with it. Obviously, we're committed to climate change. That goes without saying. So we've got to do a lot of work on that. But that doesn't have to be negative. There are a lot of other political parties are thinking, oh, these carbon taxes, green taxes, it's all negative. It's going to cost us money. Whereas we see it as a huge opportunity for the country to give us more jobs, give us bigger growth, and all of it, and to give us warmer, safer houses. So, this massive insulation program will cut the cost of living as well, because it will reduce people's energy bills and it'll give them warmer houses. So all of these things combined are a very different offering for what any of the other parties are doing.
Okay, and which again brings us on to question 4, which is climate change and the environment. So with the growing awareness and concern about climate change, which I'm sure is pleasing in some ways to you, that people are more aware of it, what measures do you propose to promote environmental sustainability in Hitchin?
Yeah, I mean, I've been, as I said at the start of this interview, I've been campaigning for many, many years, and for many of those early years, I was just banging my head against a brick wall, telling people that these things were going to happen and that we had to address them. And we could either do them gradually, we could either take these initiatives and in our stride over a gradual period, or we could panic and do it all at the end, which is where we've got to now with the climate change. Scientists across the world are saying that we're going to hit that 1.5 limit, and the measures that they were looking at a few years ago, they're breaking all those measures now, and it's almost immeasurable, the damage that we're doing. So we know that we've got to do it. And one interesting thing in here in this manifesto is that you might be surprised and I was surprised to some extent, but it's natural that there is no section in here about climate change, because it is part of everything else. It's part of everything we do. How we differ from the other parties is that they've got all their policies and they've bolted on a little bit, we'll do this about climate change as well. Whereas it's within all of our policies, it's in our housing, it's in our education, it's in our economic policies, everything is in there. So some of the things that we have got in here about, we'll be pushing for a Clean Air Act, so new quality standards for the UK. And it's terrible that children are dying now from bad air quality. And we have, the Green Party in Hitchin, for instance, have been instrumental in putting air monitors around Hitchin. And we found that some areas in Hitchin are exceeding World Health Organization air quality limits. So we're going to look for a Clean Air Act, so we've got legal standards. We'll be passing a new Rights of Nature Act, so to enshrine the rights to roam and the rights to not destroy. No industries can make profits out of nature. And we'll increase the DEFRA budget to 1.5 billion, so they can support work on, towards the environment. And you know, we'll obviously be diverting investment away from fossil fuels and towards renewables. And we think, and this might be different from the other parties as well, that nuclear power is a distraction. It takes too long and it's too expensive, and it has inherent dangers in it. Whereas we know that we can throw a lot of money and a lot of resources, a lot of good jobs into renewables, and that's our way out of the energy crisis and the climate crisis.
Okay, and how do you plan to balance economic growth? Because obviously we need growth in order to fund a lot of these policies. How can you have both economic growth and environmental protection at the same time? Because obviously, yeah.
Well, it depends what type of growth it is, really. I mean, just blind economic growth is meaningless, really. You can't have continued economic growth in a finite planet. So the economic growth that we're talking about is sustainable economic growth, and it makes sense. The Labour Party is putting all its hopes. It's like they say, well, we're going to do all these things if we win the lottery, effectively, because they're saying they're the only way they can fund any of their schemes is with economic growth. They're not going to have any tax rises, which we've been honest about that we will have. So, yeah, economic growth, but sustainable economic growth, and that economic growth will be about renewable energy, about green technologies, and about, you know, the work that we're doing here to make a cleaner, fairer planet.
Okay, thank you. Brings us on to question 5, which is a new subject: crime. 59% of people are concerned about crime. What are your plans to improve personal safety and the effectiveness of law enforcement in our community?
Yeah, it is an increasing problem, and I know that safety, and I've been hit, well, not literally hit, but I've been had a few problems in Hitchin lately. And I must say that the police support we've got in Hitchin has been very good. But you know, it's at the end of a phone; it's not visible, and I'm a bit old-fashioned and old school, and would like to see more community policing, more policing around, and more sort of activity at a community level. And that doesn't necessarily mean lots more police officers walking around, but more sort of community efforts working together. And all of these policies that we have are interconnected, and there is a connection between mental health and poverty and crime, and all of these things sort of work together. So we can't just say, well, we're going to hammer people more because crime is isolated and there's no connection between anything else. If someone's a criminal, they're a criminal. We have to look at the behavioural patterns and why these things are happening. We can't just address the symptoms. But we do know that our court systems are broken and they're not processing enough. So that lends itself to this sort of leniency on criminal behaviour. So we're looking at investing 2.5 billion to tackle the court backlog, so we can get everything processed and more meaningfully and more reasonably. Because at the moment you have people committing crimes and not getting taken to court, and you've got people that maybe sort of for whatever reason are in a court backlog who shouldn't be there, and so we've got this terrible cycle going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How will you work with the local law enforcement to ensure these plans are implemented effectively? So obviously we have police crime commissioners,
Yeah.
appears to be a political position. So how do you envisage working with local law enforcement
Yeah, well, it is a kind of a political position, but you'd hope that whichever political party is represented as a police crime commissioner would work for their local community, and in terms of not so much hierarchy, but the member of parliament would be sort of working with the commissioner and enforcing the laws and working out new ways of working and enforcing those laws.
Okay. Question 6 then, which is housing. 58% of people are concerned about housing. Specifically, affordability and availability are significant issues. What measures will you take to address the housing crisis, particularly for young people and for those on lower income? Where I did actually do some investigation here, and the average house price in Hitchin is £200,000 more than the average house price in Ipswich, for instance,
Yeah.
which is a equally buoyant area to live in, but there's an enormous difference in house prices. So someone looking to buy a house in Hitchin specifically is looking at £475,000 for a home. So what can happen to help those people?
Yeah, it is. It's got way out of hand. The price of housing, the house situation, and we. But apart from the buying your own homes, we're looking at a big house building scene, and we're looking at 150 new social homes a year being built, and we're going to fund that. We've got this in the manifesto. We're talking about right homes, right place, right price. So the homes that we're building have to be constructed properly in the right place, with full insulation and climate change and carbon neutral and that sort of thing. They have to be the right price for, as you say, for local people to be able to buy them. And we need to protect the green space and tackle fuel poverty all at the same time. So we're looking at giving local authorities the right to bring houses into social use. At the moment, there are over 1 million houses that are laying empty in the country, which is a catastrophe, with so many, particularly younger people, unable to get houses, and the homeless, as I mentioned, 300,000 children in temporary accommodation now. So, and we're going to end the right to buy scheme, which has been a failure from the start and has just made a few people rich and a lot of people homeless. So all of these measures together, we're trying to sort of make more houses available, social housing particularly more available, and hopefully let people get on the housing ladder to buy if they need to.
Clearly, that would include the building of new homes that no longer have gas boilers, that there have to be an alternative
Exactly, yeah.
Heating system, such as air source heat pumps,
Yeah, the heat
ground
pumps,
source heat pumps, that kind of thing.
Yes, yeah. And alongside our policy to incentivize people to get house insulation, we'll also give incentives for heat pumps. So we'll be funding a big replacement policy of old gas boilers to heat pumps as well. Yeah.
Question 7: roads.
Right. Yeah.
What will you do to improve the appalling state of the roads, where in particular potholes are a hazard to drivers and pedestrians, particularly in this area, but maybe elsewhere? I've lived in other places over the years, and potholes are always a problem. We've had particularly wet weather, which doesn't help, cold weather in this winter. But what do you think you can do, or the Green Party can do, to improve the appalling state of our roads?
It has got to an appalling state, and yeah, I came in here on my bike, as you know. Um, and again, this may not be popular. The Green Party says quite a lot of unpopular things because we're not owned by oligarchs, and we're not trying to sort of appease anyone who's funding us or the media. But we've got to a state with the roads because there are just too many cars on the roads, and the cars that there are on the roads are too big now. I mean, where I live in Purwell, every road has cars stacked each side, and all the houses have been built with one garage and one driveway, in the belief at the time that that's what families would want. Now families have two or three
the
cars.
garages and the driveways may well be too narrow
They may for the cars,
because
exactly.
the cars
Yeah,
have grown in size. Yeah.
yeah. So we've got to this situation by allowing this to happen, and we're just tinkering with it by filling in potholes, really. And so the Green Party will, and we're not going to go all out and ban cars or anything, but we will encourage walking and cycling. We'll put a lot of investment into public transport, and we will remove heavy freight from small roads and encourage freight to be taken on our newly nationalised train network that we'll have under a Green government. So yeah, we can carry on tinkering with the situation forever, but it's not really a long-term solution to keep filling up potholes.
Okay. We move on to community questions, and these are questions which have been asked by the members of We Love Hitchin. Thank you very much for those that did. They're not actually standing up.
No, I looked to see if anyone would come in the room to ask a question.
Yeah, that's a good point. Andrea, a member of the community, has asked, how would you vote? Now, this is an interesting one. How would you vote if there was a motion raised in Parliament to bring water companies back into the public sector and stop taking profits from this essential resource?
Well, there's one word for that. That's yes. So yeah, we've already outlined that. So we most definitely would want to bring water companies back into public use.
Okay.
So yeah.
Martin has asked, AI, should we be worried, and how should it be kept safe?
Okay, well, thank you, Martin. I haven't, unfortunately, had a lot of time to research this in advance, but I'm not sure worried is the right word. We definitely need to make sure we keep it safe. I'm from a technology background originally. Many years ago, I was a computer programmer and came through the ranks of programming, and I've seen technology change over the years. A lot of the change has been for the good, but we've let it go unchecked in some cases. I have two young children at home now that are probably on their screens as we talk, and like any other parent in the country, it is a real effort to stop them and get them off the screens. And we can't take the genie out of the bottle with that, and likewise, once we let AI go too far, we can't stop it. So we have to look at what the technology companies are doing and check their progress at every stage, because we can't let this get out of hand. It is potentially too dangerous, but also potentially very beneficial to us.
Okay, thank you. Nyland and Lauren have asked, thank you to them as well for this question. Should we be providing arms or assistance in the Gaza war? And should we be recognising Palestine as an independent state?
Okay, well, thank you for that question. And the answers are no, and yes to those two. It's obviously you can't answer this whole thing in with two words, but it is a catastrophic situation over there now. We arming an already ridiculous amount of arms and tens of thousands of deaths is not helping anyone. So well, I can't see that it can get any worse than it already is, but potentially keep giving them the arms it could. We do have to recognise Palestine. I mean, what happened on October the 7th was horrendous, and obviously Israel were going to retaliate, and they have the right to defend their country. But it is completely disproportionate now. And the only way that there will ever be a peace is if there is a state of Palestine there and it is recognised.
Thank you very much. Jeremy has asked, what are your policies regarding digital currency, and should there be a Bank of England digital currency?
It's a good question, but I'm not sure I'm qualified for that. I over the last few years, as I said, I'm from a technology background, and people have said to me, maybe 10, 15 years ago, these Bitcoin things look good. Why don't you get one? And I never did, and I've been kicking myself ever since. Of
course, like we all have, yeah.
Coulda, woulda, sort of thing. But no, I probably now there's a level of stability, so maybe the regulations need to come into play greater than they have been, and maybe the Bank of England should get involved now.
It's a difficult situation as a currency which is effectively untraceable, being brought into an official currency is almost I'm trying to think of the word really, but it's a confusing enough situation having a currency like that anyway.
It is,
and making it official, yeah.
Okay. Yes, yeah.
This last question is quite close to my heart. Vanessa and Nicola, thank you to both of those for asking. This is a sort of conglomeration of two questions. But currently, children with special needs are being failed. There is not enough provision or indeed funding necessary to ensure SEND families get the support they need, not only in education, such as lack of space or appropriate pupil to carer ratios, but also in social care and the availability of agency staff or even respite care for parents who are exhausted and alone, and in many cases completely alone. What can you pledge today that provides some degree of support and hope for those that in many cases are desperate families and carers of the most vulnerable in our society, people without a voice who rely on their representatives in Parliament to speak for them?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's something that we have a lot in our manifesto. I already mentioned the £20 billion we'll invest in social care, the increase in carers allowance by at least 10% every month. I've mentioned that we will ensure that anyone will be able to get mental health assistance within 28 days. But it is a big and growing concern that more and more children are being neglected and special educational needs are being neglected. And we pledge to put a lot more into education and to those special educational needs. And we have, like the Labour Party, we're saying we will remove the charitable status of private schools. So they will have to pay VAT. But we have a clause within the manifesto that said that anyone who gets a place through special educational needs to a private school won't have to pay that VAT.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, really, because it's a desperate situation because you have families who are given funding towards care or respite care through agency staff, but they're not being the agency staff to actually carry out that work. So even though they're being given the funding for this assistance, they're not able to take advantage of it because the people aren't there to do the jobs partially because of the pay and the conditions or whatever. But yeah, so it's a pretty serious situation. Again, I'm a parent of children with special needs, so I see that happening every day to people and us to some extent. So it's something that's really important, and hence it's a very long question and very complex. But
It's a complex
there are a lot
issue,
of a lot of families in the Hitchin group with children with additional or special needs. So,
I'm sure, and I am attending a hustings about care and carers next week at the town hall.
Right.
So hopefully I'll learn more, as well as sort of be able to portray some of the green policies.
Thank you. So we're now to the final part. Will, I wonder if you'd like to address our audience and explain to them why they should vote for you on the 4th of July.
Yes, well, the Green Party is very independent. We're not at the behest of any big media or big money. We can stick to our own ideals that have been worked on for decades. And you know what you're getting with the Green Party. The clue is in the title. We will be looking after the environment. We'll put the environment and climate change at the heart of all our policies, and we will do our best for Hitchin. And as a Hitchin resident for the last 10 years, I've grown to really enjoy living in Hitchin, and there's a lot to offer here. And as a Hitchin representative, I would do my utmost to keep those benefits of living in Hitchin and do all I can for the people in Hitchin. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your insights with us today, and I appreciate your time and patience. Hopefully our viewers won't notice we've had technical issues this evening, but I appreciate your patience whilst you were here addressing the concerns of the Hitchin residents. To our viewers, stay tuned for more interviews as we continue this series. Once again, a massive thank you to James here at the Workshop Hitchin for providing such a fabulous venue. Please do visit workshophitchin.com to find out more. And also remember, your engagement and questions are vital to this process. Please continue to share your thoughts in the comments on this post in our Facebook group, We Love Hitchin. And remember to keep the comments and discussions respectful and courteous. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.